July 25th, 2016 Board of Education meeting together. To order, sorry. So the first thing that we need is approval of agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now ready for special recognition. The Lawrence Public Schools 2016 Outstanding Citizens Award with Jerry Kimball, Assistant Superintendent, Innovation and Technology.
Good evening. Callahan Creek is a marketing and advertising agency, and it is known as a community of thinkers and makers. They actually embody the super skills of the 21st century, known as the 4 C's, that we try to develop in our students each day: creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. But when I think of Callahan Creek, I think of a 5th C, confabularium. Callahan Creek has partnered with our school district to create this year will be 3 phenomenal confabularium festivals. And all of this has happened in less than 30 months. As a business partner, they provided creative ideas, the time and the talent of their staff to create the branding, ideas, speakers, and activities for the festival. Confabularium is a free festival that brought nearly 5,000 people last year. The success is due to the hands-on learning and the state-of-the-art technologies and STEAM projects for people of all ages. All participants can participate in projects such as 3D printing, to virtual reality, to drones, to duct tape art, to nerdy derby, to recycled newspaper hats. There's something for everyone, and it doesn't cost a dime to attend. When asked why Callahan Creek would want to get involved in confabularium, the former CEO and president, Cindy Maud, said, "Creativity is at the core of everything we do at Callahan Creek. An open mind and creativity allows us to solve problems in a new way." So tonight, it is my honor to present them with the Partnership Award. And those receiving the award but could not be here tonight were Cindy Maud, the CEO and former president, and Chris Marshall, who is the current CEO and president, Ben Smith, the director of social and emerging media, and Brett Terp, the account manager. We thank you for funding and growing confabularium and sparking creativity community-wide. I hope everyone here will consider attending confabularium this year, August 13th at Free State High School from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. They even brought posters with them. And Ben, did you want to talk about a few new things that are happening this year at confabularium? Shall I give you your award now?
Well, thank you.
And these are very cool. These are so confabularium-ish.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Brett, you bet. And they're going to get a picture of us, if you don't mind. We got
I have to stand
get
next
this
to
on
yeah.
social media, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you. I'll be very brief. Just a few new things that are happening this year. First of all, thank you to everybody at the district for partnering with us on this and for sharing the passion and enthusiasm that we try to bring to the project. It's exciting to see it grow year after year. This year, we'll see more activities, more diverse activities than ever. We have a new health and fitness zone with the philosophy of healthy body, healthy mind, with everybody from local athletic groups to KU athletics participating. We'll see more technology. We have 3 different maker spaces. We have a lot more STEM, more robotics. We have national brands such coming in to the event. And we even have, focusing on the inclusion aspect of the event, the desire that everybody should have access to making. We'll also have bus service providing free transport from downtown and from East Lawrence up to the event for those who may not be able to afford even public transport or might not have cars. Our goal is to make the event accessible to everybody. So it's exciting to be able to do that. So hopefully a bigger and better event this year, and thank you for the support that you've given us in doing that.
And I just want to add to what Jerry has said. And Jerry, you have been an amazing supporter of this event as well. Jerry and Ben, thank you so very much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that goes for all the board members. Next is the, Julie, do we have any audience members? Okay. Next is consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately.
I move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, Janice?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next is the report of the president. I've just got two quick items. First, I want to congratulate Shannon for being appointed regional vice president to KSB Board of Directors for Region 1. That's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Good job. And then the next thing is, I think Janice this afternoon emailed out the committee assignments and school assignments. So take a look at it. If it doesn't work, let me know. If we need to horse trade around or something, we can do that. So, okay. All right. Next is the report of the superintendent.
So one of my items was also congratulating Shannon for her appointment. She even had an email with her photo and that came out through the KSB newsletter. So
And that was
very
thanks
nice.
to Julie, actually, for providing them with the photos.
Ah,
Appreciate that.
very good. The other things I wanted to talk about, the big part is board goals. And so at your places were several items. One of those was a sheet that provided some of the superintendent's team's recommendations. But just in advance of our board goal setting workshop on August 8th, and taking all the things that we've gathered from our teachers and our staff and our parents through all the feedback surveys, we have two documents for you. So one is the Google form that Julie really helped create and put this document together. And this is, we've had over about 100 responses to help with this. And it should be noted, though, within the 100 responses, there's a lot of people that did it in teams. And so when I visited with building leadership teams and such, why they were, some may have designated one person to maybe do the entry for them. So that was the case. And also when our parents, we had the bigger session of 50, we had one person at a table of usually 6 to 8 people who was doing most of the entry. So I think the feedback is actually much larger than actually 100 teachers, staff, and parents completing that. In addition to that, you have the Patron Insight survey, the climate survey that was done. So remember, Patron Insight is who we hired to survey all of our employees. We had 944 teachers and staff who responded to that. A lot of good feedback. Ken, with the CEO with Patron Insight, will attend our August 8th meeting and give a report, kind of share some of the executive summary of that, and kind of give a bigger picture. But I wanted to get that in your hands so that you can take a look at it and begin to get a feel for the types of things that you may think we need to focus on that go beyond what some of our recommendations are. Certainly can add to, can edit, can revise that document. It is a little bit different than we've done in the past. I think before, Dr. Dole would send out just topics instead of goal statements. But so I wanted to just show you that really quickly, what we've done. So when you look at this, it's similar format as what we've done in the past. And this is really, though, based off of a lot of this feedback that I'm sharing with you. So we've reviewed that, got a feel for what's important to people, and also just the things that we think, and the board has given us feedback on what's important to this point, and initiatives that are already out there that maybe we want to take to the next level. And so when you look at this, we now have it down to 5 broad goals. And so off on the left-hand column, you see the first one deals with curriculum instruction and assessment. The second one, we changed this up a little bit. This used to be just a wellness goal, and usually it just focused on what was happening in food services, and along with just our student wellness and things of that nature. We focused the goal a little bit more broadly on, especially as it relates to our CI3T program. And CI3T was up above in goal number 1. We just felt like it was better suited to have its own goal because it was so big and broad. I mean, really, almost everything fits under the umbrella of what we do with CI3T and meeting the social, emotional, academic, and behavioral needs of every student. So we put those things in there. If you look at goal number 3, this is similar. We had a professional learning goal, professional development goal. We had the word personalized in there and changed it up, but that's where you find most of the work around our equity work and just professional learning for both our teachers and our administrators. Goal number 5 deals with the community communications with all of our stakeholders, so that's not really changed. And then goal number 5 deals with, this was a combined one. So before we had, goal number 5 was quality programs and services, and we took that and combined it with what was goal number 6 before, which dealt specifically with facilities, and felt like it really all kind of worked under allocation of resources and how we utilized all of those together. So that's how that has come together. It's a high-level view. You can take that information and run with it. I'll send this out in a Word document so that you can just hit return and add numbers or cross through things. And if you don't want to do it that way and you want to just write it or type your own document, that's fine too. So, okay. But that will be August 8th. We'll do that. We're planning on starting at 4:30. And it may not look exactly the same as we've done it last year as far as just how that looks and how we interact with it. We're still kind of working on that, and I'll work with Marcel and Shannon also. But once again, our directors will be there, our superintendent's leadership team, as far as our assistant soups and executive directors. If you could have that information back to Janice by August 3rd, that would be great. So to give us a couple days to put it all together prior to the August 8th session. New teacher orientation, so we have 100 new teachers, around 100 new teachers who will be joining us next week already, believe it or not. Ready, set, go. So breakfast 8 o'clock Tuesday at Free State High School, so you're welcome to attend and say hi and meet some of those new folks. Recognitions, congratulations to Free State freshman Morgan Gosser, I don't know that name for sure, and Lawrence High sophomore Elizabeth Hernley, both Lawrence Children's Choir members selected to perform at National Girls Choir Festival in Philadelphia this week, and as part of the Democratic National Convention. Understand that this will be Rochelle's last school board meeting, and the Lawrence Journal World has reassigned Rochelle to the city government beat. I don't know if that's a promotion or not, but so we will welcome a new education reporter, Joanna, next week, I believe. What's that? Lavacek. Thank you for helping me out there. Lavacek. I want to thank Rochelle for all the time she spent here and working with us. She's a Lawrence High graduate, or Lawrence Public Schools graduate, I guess. And so we've been happy to have her as part of our helping us with our school news. So best of luck.
Any board commentary?
I just wanted to share that I had the opportunity this afternoon to go visit 4 of our construction projects, and we visited with Tony Barron. We visited Kennedy, Schweigler, Broken Arrow, and Deerfield, and I was so excited about the progress that's been made, and I wish I could be a fly on the wall when our students and staff get back into the buildings because they just, the buildings look great, and it's just really exciting to see the transformations that we've made in these learning spaces. So really, really excited about that. So thank you to Tony for taking all that time today, and really have great feeling about how the progress of things after the visit today. So wanted to share.
And Tony and Kyle took Rick and I last week as well through several of the schools. So I'll just reiterate what Shannon said. They're looking really good. It's impressive to see the progress being made, and feels good. Anybody else? Okay. Next, we have the update on Learning Forward Future Ready Initiative report with Jerry Kimball, Assistant Superintendent, Innovation and Technology.
I feel like I'm cheating a little bit tonight because I brought a team with me. I am going to quickly run through a bulleted list of what we've been doing in the background, but you know, the real work in Learning Forward Future Ready is the teachers and what they're excited about and the professional learning they've been involved in this summer. So I really don't want to take a lot of time with that because I can always come back and share more. And let me know what you want to know more on, and I can do that for you. But I wanted you to know that the dates are set for our parent nights at the 4 middle schools. We have those ready to go, and we could email that to you so you'd have the times and everything. You approved the acceptable use policy tonight. We've been waiting for that. We want to get that in a document and get that printed. We're creating a teacher guide to help teachers with, and the teachers are the ones that are creating it with what do you think we need to know? So it just one-stop shop for them. Keep it simple. Getting documents ready for the web presence. We are doing the frequently asked questions. We will have hard copies at parent night, and then we'll also have those on the website and in that little document for teachers. The iPads are configured, have been delivered to the schools. Dina Johnston has really been helping us out. She's helping us to write a grant for the portable hotspots, but we're going to have to purchase a few to have in place because we wouldn't hear about the grant until October. So we are going to purchase some that we would have in each building, not a lot. I'm talking 15 to 20, and the 15 and 20 would be on top of what the high schools already had, but just 15 to 20 in the middle schools for now. She is also reaching out to our community partners to see about allowing students to come to use the Wi-Fi. So we're working on that as well. Digital citizenship committees have written lesson plans. Teachers have looked at them. They like what they're seeing. We need to get that out to everyone, though. And I did ask specifically, Chris, about the passwords, and that's in 2 of the different lessons. So we are hitting on that. Remember, you can look at the Slack site anytime and see those documents. We post a lot of that there. You can see the conversations as well. We had professional learning last week. We did have some Wi-Fi issues. The Wi-Fi dropped in the auditorium. I came back and asked, what's happening? They need some wiring done, and then they can hook up some additional access points. So we need to get that done. And then there were 2 classrooms that had 35 people in them. A lot of them were streaming video, and it dropped. And so this was a nice test drive, but you wanted to know the good, the bad, the ugly. So that wasn't so good. And I have a feeling as school starts, it's going to be bumpy for a while. But we are also creating a document for teachers. Okay, the Wi-Fi's down. Try this, try that, and just a sheet that they can try, and if all else fails, help desk. So let's see. That's about it on my list. So things are moving quickly now. We're getting things done, getting them finalized. It's getting exciting. But I think the most exciting part are our educators and what they have learned this summer. And I'm not going to speak for any of them because they might tell you a little bit about the ugliness on the bus. But other than that, I'll let them get started.
This isn't coming on now. Just really quickly, I'm going to be the first one speaking, so I'll introduce myself. This is my first time speaking to the board. My name is Kelsey Book. I teach English at Lawrence High School. I love it there. It's awesome. I want to, yes, there it goes. First of all, I want to thank you all for sending such a large group. We had a lot of people to iPad Palooza. Yes, there were some issues that I'm sure you've heard about, but I think that the group that was asked to go, and Lawrence educators in general tend to have a pretty open mind about these things, and so we laughed it off and we had a good time in the desert with no air conditioning. So, again, my name's Kelsey. Thank you all so much, and Jerry, thank you for organizing all of this. That was very wonderful. We appreciate that. I can't say that enough. All right. One of the big things that I do when I start with my freshmen, particularly in my English classroom, is to try to teach them brevity. I think those of you who have been educators or in the education world know that a lot of times students speak a lot more than they need to. I do it myself sometimes. I'm an English major. That's what we do. But sometimes it pays to be brief. So the first thing that I give them is this 6-word story by Ernest Hemingway. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. And I give this to them, and I tell them to sit, kind of ruminate on it, let it sink in, and see what they can come up with. So I'm going to let you do the same thing right now. Just take a little bit of time. All right, so when you see this story, what is the story of this story? Any volunteers? No? All right, Miss Hart, Miss Hart.
It always makes me really sad when I think about the baby that never got to wear those shoes.
Absolutely. And there's 6 words here on the screen. And you were able to get all of that information, a lot of times more. When you have a room full of 25, 30 students, they get a lot of information from these 6 words. And that was a challenge that Ernest Hemingway's friends gave to him. Can you write a story in 10 words or less that makes sense? And he did it in 6. And so, if we are able to convey all this information in just 6 words, how can we take that and expand it to the English classroom? Which I've done a lot with just writing. But now we've gone to iPad Palooza, and I'm so excited about all of the new ways that I learned to do this. The first one is actually called the 6-word story, which was awesome. A presenter from St. Louis, hopefully we can get him here at some point. He was amazing. His name is Don Goebel. I think many of us are following him on Twitter, and he is following us back and tweeting us back and just being the biggest support system there is, which is amazing. He taught us this lesson, and it's just how to get your message across in 6 words. And instead of just writing it down or saying it, you put it into a video form. So I have one that I made about the iPad Palooza experience. It features our own Miss Buck here. You'll see in a minute, but I will play this for you real quick. Yeah, so Lindsay was really into it there. But yeah, what you can see is even though everyone had an iPad in their hands, not at every part of the experience were people learning or using just the iPad. There was, all the stuff with the little toy cars and everything. What happened here? There we go. And so just because we're giving the kids this technology doesn't mean that every part of the education experience is going to be technology, and I think that's a really important takeaway that a lot of us have discussed. But what I love about this project is that when you do have those classes of 30 students and you have each of them do this, it took us 15 or 30 minutes to make our videos and get everything together, edited, all the shots, everything. For a very brief formative or summative assessment, I could see this really working in many, many of the fields. It's engaging because there is technology use. I think for a lot of students that makes it really fun. And it really kind of combines curriculum that just goes across all the boundaries of what we've seen in the past. For example, I gave some ideas that I came up with. People in other fields could maybe come up with better ones for their own, but in the ELA classroom, you could really just make a quick little brief summary of what you're doing for research for your essay. And then you could present that to the teacher, me, and I can approve it or say, hey, maybe I think that we should try to go this way instead. And then they could start forming their essay. In math, I thought complex equations in the high school, what better way to show your work and show how you got there than by doing something like this that's engaging. I think that it could possibly work. In science, explaining lab findings. We all love doing those labs. I know I did. And in history, just talking about various time periods. I think that there are all sorts of things that you could do with this. What I love is that it includes multimedia technology. It includes art and film curriculum standards that we could put in there. And it's a great new form of storytelling that a lot of our students haven't had, which is visual. And I just love that it includes the core classes as well as the STEM classes. I think that's very fun to bring into the English classroom, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, that's mine. I think Kelly's up next.
Hello. I'm Kelly Hart. I teach 7th grade ELA at South Middle School. Usually I come here and talk to you guys about blended learning and how fabulous that is and how it's transformed my teaching. Well, I'm back to talk about something else that's also going to transform my teaching. Yay! I'm so excited. So this is a little sketch notey doodad that I created on my way home from iPad Palooza. And it's no Jerry Kimball piece of sketchnoting artwork, but I tried. And as I was heading home, I had so much information in my head. I just kind of had to dump it all out. And then I tried to cute it up a little bit. So almost every session that I attended, all the keynote speakers, they all kept talking about how it's all about making things and creation. And the content isn't really the content anymore. Now the creative process is the content. The experience is the content. And I was like, yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, that other stuff is important too, but it's so important that kids know how to go through all the different steps. And when I teach writing, it's all about the process, right? The finished product is important, but where your real learning takes place is during that process. So this kind of just solidified for me that week in Austin. Casey Mitchell, a speaker that I listened to and went to some of her sessions, talked about how a lot of times when you're sending out new initiatives to staff, they'll go, yeah, but, and then list all the things that are going to go wrong. And Casey said to really turn that on its head and challenge your staff to say, yeah, and. So instead of, yeah, but the Wi-Fi will go down, yeah, and when the Wi-Fi goes down, we can do this instead, and just kind of turn everything around and change your thinking. And then I listened to another keynote speaker, Adam, talking about how teachers should be asking themselves, why not? Why not have a kid build a drone? Why not do all these fun, insane things? So my big takeaway from the week was taking that yes and why not and mashing them together and taking that into my classroom and just trying to give that to my kids and let them stop limiting themselves and stop, well, we couldn't, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to go for it. So those are my big takeaways. My new motto for the year is yes and why not. The other thing I want to talk to you about, and I could talk about this all night, so I'll try to make it sort of brief, is the App-Mazing Race. This is an adventure in app smashing and learning and teamwork and the creative process. We're actually putting on an App-Mazing Race for some district administrators on Wednesday. I'm so psyched for that. And we're also going to try to put together one for the people at Confabularium to do. We talked about doing one with you guys tonight, but we're like, we don't have a lot of time. And you really have to have time for it to sink in how cool it is. So sorry. But basically what it is, there's an app called Eventsy, and we were able to meet the guys that made the app at iPad Palooza. They're super cool, and they plug in all these scavenger-style clues into the app, and then you push them out to all the people, which were us, which will be you soon, and you get the clues, and you have to go figure out, okay, I need a picture to represent this clue. So I gave you some of the examples of some of my clues that I turned in. One of them was to spell out a word with your body parts. And so, of course, all over the high school, people are laying on the floor spelling out stuff, which we did that too, but we used our hands. Our team name was the Princess Leia's. There was a Star Wars theme, so we tried to riff off that. So we spelled out the word slay with our hands. And that one I only sent through one app. I put a filter on it and put a frame around it to kind of make it interesting looking, but the 4 across the bottom, I used at least 2, sometimes 3 different apps to create those different pictures. The iPad Palooza 2017 When You Wish Upon an App was for the create a theme for next year's iPad Palooza. And so I had to go to the internet and find the Disney font, and then I typed in what I wanted it to say, and I did a screen grab of that, and then I had to crop it and bring it into a different one and find the Disney picture. And you can't really see it, but there's a flag above the Disney tower. That's an iPad turned on its side, so I had to put that in there. So this is app smashing, where you take a picture and you run it through some different processes, some different apps to do whatever it is you need to do. And they set up the clue so that you have to run your picture through some different apps to be able to achieve whatever the clue is. We had so much fun doing this. It was like insane how much fun we were having. And at the end of the week, I was like, you guys, oh my God, they tricked us into learning how to do all this stuff on the iPad. We just learned how to do all this stuff on the iPad that we didn't know how to do. And they tricked us like that. How great was that though? And so we've been pestering Jerry, please, can we have Evency for all the kids? It's so exciting. And I went to a presentation where a teacher did like an Amazing Race throughout her class when they were reading The Hobbit. I thought, how cool is that? So I hopefully will get the opportunity to try some of that in my English class. Maybe not this year, maybe second semester. I don't know. We'll see. So it was really great. Aside from all the iPad stuff, the Amazing Race really helps develop those soft skills that we keep hearing about that employers want people to have: collaboration, communication, teamwork. There was a moment where I was like, I have no more ideas. I'm out of ideas. This is terrible. I can't do this anymore. My creativity's tapped. I'm done. And one of my teammates kind of, she's like, no, come on, you got this. You so got this. And that's when I came up with the When You Wish Upon an App. I was like, oh, I do have a good idea left in the tank. So I can't say enough about how incredible it was. So thank you for that opportunity and for the opportunity to bring these incredible devices to my students. I'm so excited. So.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Buck. I'm a special ed teacher at Lawrence High. I also had the opportunity to go to iPad Palooza this summer. I had lots and lots of takeaways, but I'm just going to touch on 3 today. One of the coolest things about iPad Palooza was the chance to get to see some really amazing presenters. George Kuros, I had no idea who he was going into this, but I sat in his presentation and was blown away. Immediately followed him on Twitter and started live tweeting things he was saying. And the quote right up there is one that really stuck with me. The biggest game changer in education, an educator as an innovator. And so then I started kind of doing more investigating on who he is and what he does. He's actually written a book called The Innovator's Mindset, if you've heard of that, which Tara will be talking more about that a little bit later. Because of time purposes, I'm going to skip this little link right here, but I think one of our people, or Jerry, will be sending you our slide presentation. So if you'd like to see George Kuros from iPad Palooza 2015, that link is right there. It's just a 4-minute thing, and actually a lot of what he says in there, he said this year. So. And then the iPad impacting the classroom is the next point I want to talk about. The iPad is not a means of replacing teaching. That point, was said over and over again. But it's a way in which we can enhance a student's learning. It's a way in which we can empower them to take charge of their learning. And it increases engagement, prepares them for the future, because we do live in a digital world. Students can learn at their own pace. The ability for connection is really important. That we saw a video about how Google Forms can be a way for those students who might be more introverted or could be shy or reserved in the classroom, but they might have so much they want to say, they just don't want to speak up in front of their peers. And this teacher used Google Forms as a way to just check in daily and have these students share. And the connections she made with some of these students were pretty amazing. And so that was pretty amazing to watch. I do have one quick video I want to show.
Imagine the awesomest thing you can, like an automatic grilled cheese maker, or a time machine, or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheese maker. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her? But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is heavy. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's Cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better, forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're gonna need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
So just the idea that by empowering these students, giving them access to technology and being educators as innovators, teaching them to be innovators too, and putting their learning in their hands through things like the Amazing Race. I mean, that really was something that made us all so engaged, and we learned so much with, like she said, without even realizing it. The last thing I want to mention, and I have some handouts I'm just going to pass out while the next presenter gets ready, Tara is next, is the idea of having a positive digital footprint. I'll talk because I know I have to be in the microphone to do that. When we were at Westlake High School, which is where, oh, thank you, perfect, where iPad Palooza was, they had awesome posters and inspirational flyers all over the place. And the ones that are being handed out to you right now are from Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media is a nonprofit that provides education and advocacy to families to promote safe technology and media for children. So these are just two examples of things that we can download, we can laminate, and then hang up just as kind of fun ways kids can be reminded of digital citizenship and having a positive digital footprint. That concludes my part. Thank you.
All right, my name is Tara, Tara Martin. I'm actually the only elementary representative, and you can see I brought you a toy. And you guys each have one of these in your bag there, but I'm just going to explain why I brought this toy to explain my application of what I learned at iPad Palooza. So when Jerry asked us to present, I was like, oh my goodness, how can you narrow that down? Like, there's just so much information, as you've seen, so many combinations, curious combinations of ideas. And we all came back with something a little bit different. So I tried to come up with, in my math mind, I was thinking, I want an equation to express what I'm thinking. So curious combinations plus execution equals innovation. I'm going to explain this today through looking at a kaleidoscope. And I'm actually going to use an app that I learned at iPad Palooza called Adobe Spark Page. So this is a way kids could actually present. It's just another way to present instead of PowerPoint or other types of presentations. So we're going to start. And first, I'd like to thank you guys for sending us. Honestly, hands down, the best experience and the connections of ideas. It was incredible. I came from Topeka. I've been here for 2 years, and I've been to a lot of trainings all over different places. And making the connections that I made at iPad Palooza has been life-changing for me, and I'm about to share that with you. But, I mean, the body odor and the sweat on the bus, I still wouldn't trade it. Like, everything about the experience was so awesome. It was eye-opening in lots of ways, and so that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So, oh, I forgot to show you the bus pictures. There we are on the bridge. All right. So, thinking about the kaleidoscope, there's 4 different pieces I would like to relate my experience and my application to what I learned from iPad Palooza. I'd like to talk a little bit about the peephole, the turning mechanism. I didn't know its name, so I just gave it that name. The beads inside, and then the mirrors that are also within this device, this instrument. So let's start first with the peephole. The peephole is going to represent our vision. So everybody has to start somewhere. And when I went to iPad Palooza, I had a vision, had an idea of what innovation in education might look like. I had an idea of my philosophy on that. And I also had an idea that when I get there, I want to leave different than I came. I was like, I need to learn some new things. But when I looked into my kaleidoscope, I had a beautiful picture already in my mind. And I didn't really think of this experience as a kaleidoscope until way later when she asked us to present. But I was like, in my mind, I thought, yeah, I'm going in with some pretty neat ideas already. And I'm telling you what, I left much different than I changed. My expectation was not let down by these people, by the presenters, by the organization, by Carl Hooker. They just did a phenomenal job of making us feel like comfortable, and they were such real people. Like they were just so down to earth. So I'd like to think a little bit about, or talk a little bit about the beads inside, the multicolored, multi-shaped, multi-textured beads, which is so cool to me. And they represent all the ideas in the whole entire world. In my presentation today, that's what they're going to represent. Every philosophy, every theory, every field, every profession, everything, all ideas in the entire world are these beads. Everything's in there that we need. And Mark Twain said it like this one time. He said, there's no such thing as a new idea. It's impossible. There is a such thing as a new idea when all of these ideas are combined. So it's old ideas and a new combination of them, a new curious combination that creates a new idea. And so needless to say, during this experience, I met a lot of personal learning networking, personal learning network, PLN, met a lot of people that influenced me, that changed my thinking, and that gave me a new idea. They gave me a new combination. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. And one guy I'd like to talk to you about is George Quiros. So I had met him one other time in Olathe. You guys actually sent me there too, so thank you so much for sending me there as well. And that's the first time I met him in May. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was texting Kirsten Wonder. We have to do this Innovator's Mindset. This is the coolest thing ever. And I only heard him for 1 hour, and then I went to his digital footprints session, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be like a contributor to Twitter instead of just a recipient. I just like steal people's ideas and I never put anything back out there. And so I saw him, and this is our fine bus that broke down, that one right there. So I saw him and he was going out to his car, he has his bags and everything. I'm like, hey, I'm a fan of yours on Twitter. I just became like 2 weeks ago, but can we get a selfie? And he was just so kind. He's like, oh, that wasn't very good. So we took like 4 of them. He was just really funny. And it turned out that I never knew George was going to become like my friend. And like literally, he's my friend. I'm about to tell you about this. So the turning mechanism is when you make those connections, right? So when you're looking in and you turn, a new connection is being made, a new image, a new picture. And he is a part of my first turning of the kaleidoscope at iPad Palooza, because he stopped and talked to me the very next day, and he's like, hey, so I love your energy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, can you sign my book? But I didn't have my book. And he's like, I will send you a signed book. I don't have any more books, and I'm leaving right after this to catch a plane. And I was like, oh, it's okay. It's no big deal. And I thought, he'll never send me a signed book, but he took my address. And I thought, this is kind of awkward, but I'll just give it to him anyway because I really want it. And who knows, he really did send me a signed book, and I'm going to share that with you too. But he talked to me a little bit about your ambitions. What are your ambitions as an educator? He just I'm sure he had lots of things to do. And I was like, oh, I'm an aspiring administrator. I want to be an author. I have these huge dreams. And he's like, oh, really, you want to be an author? You should start a blog. I'm like, what? He's like, start your own website. Start writing there. It's a great place to start. That's what I did. He's telling me a little about speaking, writing. And so he did send me my signed copy of my book. When I got home, I had it in the mail. And I was like, really? And so 2 days later after we left iPad Palooza, I get this message on Twitter, for the whole world to see, asking me if I started my website yet. I'm like, no. He's like, what kind of innovator are you? I'm like, obviously not a very good one. He's like, you said you have a growth mindset. Are you willing to take that this step further? I was like, that's a good challenge. Because if I can think it, why don't I just try to do it? And so I got on the web, and I was looking at all these different ways you can start a website, and it was overwhelming, to say the least. And so I messaged him back on Twitter. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. It seems really hard. And he's like, no, I will walk you through it. I have an appointment tomorrow at 3, opening tomorrow at 3. Can you get on Google Hangout or FaceTime or Skype? I'll walk you through how to set up your website. He literally walked me through, and I was like, I don't even know what I want to call it. And he just asked all these open-ended questions, and here I come up with this title, Real. And REAL is an acronym, and if you'd like to look at my website, I was going to pull it up, but this has taken a long time. But it's TaraMMartin.com. Please do check it out. I have to give George lots of, he gets a lot of kudos because he really did help me get it set up. But he left me hanging enough that I had to figure a lot of things out myself. Had to learn to code because he didn't let me take the easy route of the ones that are already set up. He let me take the one that you have to self-code and all these things. And I'm like, I am going to die. It's the most challenging thing I've tried in a long, long time. But you know what? It's powerful. It's awesome. And it's really helped me stretch. And so he told me, he's like, use it as your digital professional portfolio. If you can show people what you can do and they can look at you at any time, they can Google your name, that means something. And so I changed my standards to, he's like, don't do the standards that you do right now. Do the ones you're aiming for. I'm like, okay, let's just go for administrative standards. So anytime I write a blog, put anything on my professional portfolio, which is what this is, I link it, I categorize it to a standard. And then I tag all the people that influenced me to come up with that idea, that made that combination, that curious combination of ideas. So it's very much in the making, but please do check it out. I'll take any and all feedback. I am very good with critical feedback. So the next turn from iPad Palooza, and I know I'm taking more than my time, but I just have just a tad bit more, was I got this book. I read all of George's Innovator's Mindset, which, by the way, everybody in the education world should read it. It's so personal. It has this personal twist, and then every single page is applicable. It's so incredibly awesome, and it challenged my thinking. But I looked in the back of the book, and it offers you, it requests, refers other books. And I was like, oh, Teach Like a Pirate. That sounds fun. Let's try that. So I got Teach Like a Pirate. I was on vacation. I went to Barnes & Noble. I was like, I'm looking for Teach Like a Pirate. There was one copy. I was like, perfect. I start reading it by the pool, and I'm digging this Teach Like a Pirate. So I start tweeting all these quotes out. And the author, Dave Burgess, he tweets back to me, oh, I love that you're loving my book. He says something back, and I'm once again, author struck. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And then he says, I said, thank you so much. Wow, I just love the personal connections you make in your book. And I want to be an author one day. I'm actually thinking about starting my own blog. This guy, George Kuros. And then I look on the back of his book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dave Burgess is the publisher of his book. I'm like, so I'm kind of a little freaking out that he's communicating with me on Twitter. And long story short, because I've already taken more than my time, this is Dave Burgess. He read my blog. He from that connection, he talked to George a little bit, and they just kind of back and forth. And they included me in on this 3-way conversation through Twitter Messenger. And they said, we want to get her involved in some of these beginning author consulting classes. And so you can do them through Google Hangout. You can do them all different ways. And they can bring you to California, too. You can do all different things. He's like, let's just do the beginning one. I'm like, oh, my goodness, I haven't even started a book. It's just something I'm dreaming of doing. He's like, no, this is the perfect time. Give you kind of an overview. And so this is me yesterday at 3 o'clock. I just added this in the presentation. I took my first consulting of beginning author classes with Dave Burgess himself. And he even recognized my nervousness through the computer. He's like, are you okay? Do you need some water? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm just still kind of a little dumbfounded by this whole experience. I went to an iPad Palooza, and then all these things are happening. So super exciting times. The last thing of the kaleidoscope are the mirrors. And I'm sure you can tell that it's going to be the reflections from all different angles. It was cool to hear reflections and feedback from George Kuros, somebody in Canada, an author, principal, all these things, a very established speaker, keynote speaker, and then meeting his publisher, and hearing their take on things. And they think I have potential, and they think I can reach some other kids or some other educators and put your stuff out there. And it's crazy, the feedback you get on your blog, the comments. They're like, this is really resonating with me, and I have this to share with you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. I know some teachers that will really use this. So after iPad Palooza, I have can honestly say curious combinations plus execution, actually acting and doing it, equals innovation. And that is what I want for our students at Lawrence Public Schools. That's what I want for students and educators across the world. Educators are not exempt from this. Everybody needs to be involved in innovation. And so the process of creating, exposing my vulnerability, knowing that I can't do this right, and I've Googled every single YouTube video, and then I have to ask George, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, oh, got to type this out. But he helps me, but exposing that vulnerability, going through that process, and then learning something new, it's empowering. It's exciting. And I know that's what kids think when they try something that they're interested in, like if we could just keep that going. So, side note, and then I'm almost done. I planned this whole presentation out. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. The kaleidoscope, it fits perfect, and all these parts, and I love it. And then I went to find Mark Twain's quote about no new idea being a new idea. I was like, I know, I've heard that before. So I looked up the quote, and this is hilarious. And this kind of, I'll tell you why it's disheartening a little bit, but exciting. He says in his autobiography, I found it last night, there's no such thing as a new idea. It's impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas, put them in sort of a mental kaleidoscope, and give them a turn, and they make a new curious combination. I stole curious combination, by the way, after I read this. But I didn't steal a kaleidoscope idea from him. And we keep on turning and making new combinations indefinitely, but they are the same old pieces of colored glass that have been used through all age, Mark Twain. And so I thought, man, that's disheartening. I thought I came up with this great idea, but it all the more proves his point. There are so many ideas out there, but when you combine them up, they create a new idea. It's old ideas with a new collaboration. So I just never want to lose this idea of learning, teaching, sharing, learning, teaching, sharing. Because the more you share, the more you have to learn, because somebody already knows your stuff, right? So you got to keep going, and that's the innovator's mindset. That's the exciting part about it. So how am I going to use this to help Lawrence Public Schools? It's already started. Like on my blog, they're already finding different things. They're like, hey, can you stop by my school and try this out with me? Like, I would love to. Let's do this. And then they're like, hey, here I am meeting with a couple of different educators, and they were wanting to start their own website. I was like, this is so cool. And I'm the blind leading the blind, but hey, we have somebody that can help us out. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for sharing so many experiences with me. I don't know if I'll be an author one day, but I'm excited about the opportunity. And it all started with one connection, one ripple effect from one man who saw an educator that was super excited at iPad Palooza, a place where you guys sent us. So I think there's so many good things that can come out of this. And I think if we just keep pushing kids to be innovators, that's really what we want. And they can create things. So thank you.
Well, I just have to share, just like the first time I put on a pair of tennis shoes and I questioned whether or not I was a runner, just the first time you wrote something, you are an author.
Perfect. Thank you. Validated.
Hi, I'm Josh Spradlin. I teach science at the LMCMS. I know Tara brought you all gifts. I brought you nothing. Sorry. I went to, let me get up the, I went to iPad Palooza kind of with a few ideas in mind. And actually, after we had gone through several of these presentations, they didn't really have a session that I was looking for. I was trying to learn about iTunes University and iBooks, trying to how we can use these iPads at home. And on the last day, they had something that was called an unfestival session. And I was like, what the heck is that? And so I went up and I asked, and basically it was for anything that wasn't presented, you could write your name up on the list and people would try and collaborate with you. So that's an awesome idea for after a unit. So anyway, I went up there and I said, I'd like to learn about iTunes U. And 5 minutes later, I look up on this gigantic projector and it says iTunes U Unfestival presented by Josh. And I was like, oh my God. And so we went to this room, and basically as we were there, people stopped in, collaborated with us, told us kind of their experience with iTunes U, iBooks, and it became a really powerful tool. We're still working on how we're going to use the iPad at home, how we're going to make this all work. But it was very encouraging kind of to see that yeah, there were other districts that had struggled with that, and they made their way through. So I'm looking forward to that. So I've actually started practicing with an iTunes U course. It's really bad right now, but it will get better. The other thing that I really learned a lot was how much material is out there currently in iBooks that is free, available. So if, for instance, I can't necessarily get all of my science book on an iPad home for them to read, there is other material out there, and there's a huge library of it. And so I'm going through, I probably have like 50 bookmarks now on my browser. And so this is just one of them for something that I teach in 7th grade, minerals and rocks. And so it was very, very fulfilling to kind of see that, yes, there are people that have had this same problem. You put your problem out there, and people are willing to come and help. And so that was my big takeaway from iPad Palooza. Pat's actually going to switch technology here for a second, but we did want to invite everyone out to our classrooms. If you can, throughout the year, you can stop in, see how we're using this, watch us fail, and make it into a learning experience. So again, I think you guys will get this presentation, but our names are up there, and please feel free to stop by.
All right. Let's see here. Should be on, right? Yeah. Do I need to hit some? Oh, there I am. I'm good. All right. My name is Patrick Nunn. I'm the PE teacher at Liberty Memorial Central Middle School and head wrestling coach over at Lawrence High School. And I'm going to take you through iPad out of the box. So this was a class actually set up on iTunes U, and it's basically just what can the iPad do straight out of the box. So a brief guide to experience in the environment. The first thing as teachers, what we're going to have to do is change our culture of learning. For years and years, we've stood up in front of the class, give out all the information, review it, expect it coming back from all the students. That's going to be that's got to change. It's going to change on the students taking charge of their own learning. And how we're going to do that is through a pyramid of support. The students are going to be at the top of the pyramid, but just like every pyramid, the base has got to be strong enough to support the students and what they need. And the base is going to be built with parents, guardians, and educators all working together, all communicating together, so we can best give our learning environment to those students at all different levels. So how do we as educators change our focus to student-centered? First, we're going to enable collaboration. We've done this on the middle school. We have collaboration time already worked in. We also have job-alike work in, where like all the middle school PE teachers get together, all the middle school science, and then we also have grade level teams. And so we're doing that already. But not only do we need to do that within our schools and within our school district, we need to go outside of our school district and see what other districts are doing, see what things going on in other states, because other states might be doing a lot of different other things. And a lot of school districts have already gone to one-to-one, and it's best to ask them what's going on and what we need to expect, because there are going to be some pitfalls. But it's okay, because we're going to figure it out. The second thing is we're going to celebrate success. So we want to make sure that whatever success it is, we're going to celebrate it. If it's just even turning on the iPad, 'cause someone's never turned it on, awesome, great, making sure that you can hook up to the Wi-Fi, awesome. If it goes down, that's fine, we'll figure it out. But hey, you got that far, we're doing good. We want to also celebrate risk, which is something that's kind of been taken away a little bit too much. And so we want people to fail. It's Thomas Edison. It took him 10,000 times to figure out how to make a light bulb. But you ask him, it's like, no, I found 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. All I need to do it once. Once was great. So the other thing is to reinforce and reflect on the process, what's going on, which means you have to ask questions. What went right? What went wrong? What could we done differently? What could have happened? We just did it on a video. Was that good enough for everybody to get the information? Or did you guys need to put it in a book or put it on paper? Or what could have made that information communication to you a lot better? And number five is eliminate the buts or what ifs. It's just like if you don't go answer the door, you don't know what's going to be on the other side. Coy Cooper, who's a presenter down at the NWCA, National Wrestling Coaches Association, is always about making your mark. If you're in that comfort zone that you stay in, if you keep staying in that comfort zone, you're never going to experience what could happen if you went out of that comfort zone. So we have to make that comfort zone a little bit bigger. Just give them a little bit of risk each day to where they get comfortable and taking those risks and taking those failures. And the one thing that all of our teachers have to understand is that it's going to fail. There's times and days that this stuff might not work for some reason or another. And so we have to realize that and plan for it. And then, as number 6 is, be independent. Figure it out. So you need to be your own Sherlock. Figure out what's going on with the iPad. Might be something out of your control. Well, it's not. Okay, then we're going to this. We're doing this today. One of the thought processes that we're going to use is LEAP, which is not the Lawrence Education Area Partners, but learning and engaging through access personalization. So with the iPad, what we're going to be able to do is cater the education to all levels of students. So I can challenge my high-level students with this type of assignment. I can challenge my low-level students with this type of assignment, but it's all personalized to where they're going to be able to have some success, but they're going to have some risk also, okay? So why do we want to do this in the first place? Why do we want to go to one-on-one? Why do we want to do all this? To provide the best experience and environment for learning that we can. The TPAC model here is a system that combines 3 different knowledges: technology, content knowledge, and the teaching process. So at certain points in time, our teachers are going to be inside these 3 circles. Now, what we want to shoot for is in the very center of all 3 circles where we're using all 3 of them. But in our first year, that's going to be hit and miss through this first year. As our teachers who are struggling with their technology level or knowledge, as they get better, then we're going to get closer to the center, okay? And so, as long as we're hitting, within these 3 areas, it's going to be good. What we want to focus on, though, is our SAMR model. And the SAMR model starts off with substitution. Okay, I have a book. I go to the library. I check out a book. That's fine. I go on my iPad. I go to iBooks. I have the same book. I can read it on my iPad, or I can read the book, holding the book. Augmentation. I have the book that I can read, or I can go on iTunes. I can highlight the text, and I can push a button and have the iPad read the text to me. And so I can follow along in the book. I can understand the words now because I can hear them being spoken to me. So with those students who might be dyslexic, that's one way that we can get to those students. Then in these 2 segments here, substitution and augmentation, we're looking at just enhancing the learning process, okay? As we move up, now we're moving into modification. So now you got the assignment, you read the book, I want you to do a book report on it. And as they're doing the book report, they're selecting pictures, and now they can make the pictures come to life by animating them. And so as you're reading the story, you click on the picture, all of a sudden the picture comes up and it starts talking to you or starts moving the action. That's what's going on in the story. And then redefinition. So now, with that same story that they're doing, they have the pictures that are moving. They can actually now go to their classmates and have them actually, if there's a character speaking, they can have different characters speaking. When you click on, John says this, you click on John, and then it's another student actually saying the text. And so that's another way to import and incorporate everybody into the learning process, and that's when the transformation happens. Okay. So when we talk about essential apps, and like this has been like our biggest thing, because it came out, it was like if we need to have all your apps before, and so like there's a huge list right now, which is fine. But on what comes on the iPad, one thing with anything that you want to be an essential, there's two things. It's got to be productive, and it's got to be creative. So with the iPad, we have Pages, which is a Word and desktop publisher, Numbers, which is spreadsheets, Keynote, which is presentation, which is this presentation here. This was done with Keynote. I never used Keynote until I started making this. But I had to use PowerPoint. Well, PowerPoint and Keynote are kind of the same thing, so I just figured it out. I figured out how to crop my desktop and capture that picture and add it here, then add the text on below it. And so, it's one of those things that I didn't have a lot, but I had some prior knowledge to what was going on, and I used that prior knowledge to create something. It's just simple, but I did something that I hadn't done before. And so that's celebrating the success and celebrating the risk. So now what I'm going to do is take you to the Apple Classroom. And I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. Did it kick me off? It kicked me off. Hang on. So come back. And this is that part that figure it out. We figured it out. So I can get kicked back on. All right, so we're back on. Come back in here. So here's the video on Apple Classroom. Why is it? I plugged it in. This one? This one?
Oh, no.
No.
We could have them watch it from the thing if we want to.
Oh, yeah.
Should we do that?
How did it just come up? All right. Let's try it. That's not working either. All right. No. Well, it's an awesome video.
It is awesome.
So basically, with the Apple Classroom, and I don't know why. Yeah, well, maybe it's not plugged in. Nope, it's plugged in. With the Apple Classroom, you can see everybody's iPad that's in your class, and you can, let's say you want to have an app that they all do. Well, I can go to the app in my iPad. I can push it out to every single iPad in my class. And then I can lock it down to where they can't deviate from that. The other thing is that I can create groups. So if I want a group of students together, I can make different groups on, just different abilities, different skills and all that, and give them assignments through that. and then I can also lock their iPad down. So, so if they're not, like if they're venturing off where they're supposed to be, one, they know that a teacher's looking at them because there's a blue bar that pops up on their iPad. I can send that person a message, hey, you need to get back on the website that we're looking at. If not, then I can just shut their iPad down. And I have to be the one that unlocks it before they go to the next class. So it's a nice little tool that's built in. What was the other thing that goes with this? And this is where they're making the groups here. And that's how it opens up on all the iPads. And then you can set a time, and all the iPads will shut off, which is like about 5 or 10 minutes within the class, and that brings everybody back together. And this is the following the student's progress. So you can actually see what every student has on their iPad. Their screen pops up on yours.
Jerry, you've mentioned in the past classroom management software. That's what this is, right?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll send you all the presentations so you could look at that video and hear it. Although you're doing a good job of explaining.
Yeah. So this is Google Classroom. I just went to the Google, everything Google. That was one of the presenters down there. I made this class actually sent you guys emails. I don't know if you got them or not, but so what happens is you would enter the class with a class code, and then I could actually sent this question out, and then on below it is the forms. So I attached a Google form, and you would send the form back to me. It would come back into here, and then it would count how many were done, how many haven't replied, and I could keep the score, and then I could take that score, put it in the Blackboard, and then Blackboard would send it to Skyward, or I could just do it manually. The one thing that's Google that's going to help everything is that we can use the Apple Classroom to manage where they go on the iPads. Then we can use the Google Docs, Google Forms, and Google Things for all our worksheets and all that stuff. And so that's a good way of using both of them. And down in the Eanes, Texas, that's what their plan is going to be, is try to mirror the two together and try to use the best of both worlds on those two things. And then also with Blackboard, once I just started blended learning, and so I haven't been away from Blackboard since I got my master's. So it's going to be a learning process for me, but once that gets up and running, that should be okay. The one thing though is all of our middle school students are on mobile devices, so that might be a hard interface to come into, but I think it's going to be all right. I'll come back here. And so this would be the code that you would put in, and that would get you into the class. So that's what I have. It was an awesome time. It was one of the things that, being a PE teacher, they're like, well, how are you going to use iPads in PE? I don't know, but we're going to find a way. And that's my answer. It's like, we're going to figure it out. And so there's a lot of stuff, a lot of apps, a lot of different things that you can do, just from there. And I think the biggest thing I got out of it was just like what happens down at the wrestling convention. You get a bunch of people from all across the United States. You get them in a room, and you just start talking. Last year, there was 50 high school coaches down there. 5 of them already in the Hall of Fame, and those 5 already have 1,000 dual wins. So they had, been in for 30 or 40 years, and they've seen it all and done it all. And so we're just sitting there bouncing ideas off from left and right, and just like trying to write down every word they said. It was just amazing. This conference was just like that. It gave us plenty of time to where we can gather in big difference in the cafeteria and like talk to other people from other school districts, other states, and just bounce ideas off them. So thank you very much for letting me go.
So these people are Twitter happy now. And so they want to do if it's by yourself, it's a selfie. And if it's with a group, it's an Essie. Or a groupie. So we really do need you all to stand up because... Yes. I also wanted to tell you, Jeff Plinsky made a really nice video, and we're going to include that in here so you can watch it as well. So we got to get in there. Yeah. All right. Okay, we think we have everyone. Now do something crazy, board members. They're like, we're on the school board. That's crazy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sending us.
I think you can see they appreciated it and learned quite a bit. She's setting the pattern for us.
Send me feedback. I would love it. But you're an author. Yeah. So, see, I'm not an author, but look yet.
I'm actually really thrilled about the idea that you're actually hand coding this, you're not using whistling.
I know, I cheat a little. I go back and forth. But he's teaching me a little coding.
Hey, I'm down with
But
that.
it's back and forth, yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just looking at this really cool thing called Step Back. You can get an app for
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jerry and crew, for that. That was awesome. It's great to see the enthusiasm, and I think that bodes well for down the road, getting this implemented. Okay, next up is the presentation of the 2016-2017 budget and approval for publication with Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance.
We got kaleidoscopes with our last presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We get a budget
I can
this
go
time.
get you some chocolate.
That's right.
I don't have anything fun, I'm sorry.
That's your title.
Maybe we can look at our budget through our kaleidoscopes?
You could, and you know what? It could look really good that way. Colorful, anyway. Okay. I don't know if I'm on. Good evening, Kathy Johnson, Director of Finance. Tonight is kind of go through a high-level budget presentation, and then at the end of this, we'll approve what we call the Code 99, or the publication of the budget, which sets your budget maximums and your mill levies. So a little bit of it is a review, and a little bit of it is new. So just kind of a reminder, the calendar of board action for today is basically you're going to approve, again, that publication for the local paper. It's your maximum budget authorities and your mill levy. Then we have 7 funds that we have a mill levy in. What you set tonight is the maximum. If you come to the hearing on the 8th, we could go down, but we can't go up after it's published. The budget authorities that we've done within the Code 99 are things that were budget direction given by the board to administration. Could be additions and reductions, staffing and program decisions that have happened through the year, as well as what might have happened in past years that we've just continued to bring forward. The general fund and supplemental general fund and the restricted special revenue funds are all driven by the state, so they're all formula driven, so the result is just what that formula gives us. There are some funds that are not formula driven, and when you think about what we do for the budget, we sometimes talk about we publish high because we need to have that budget authority in order to navigate what we need to do for the year, but that publication is to ensure we have authority, not that we're going to necessarily spend it, because if we don't have the revenues, we can't, but if we do get revenues and we haven't published high enough, we also can't spend it. So we kind of have to navigate what makes sense for that. And that is the best practice direction that the Department of Education gives us when we build this. Tonight, you'll approve that for publication, and then we'll have the hearing on August 8th at 7 o'clock. And then following, within the board meeting, you'll have the actual approval of the budget. And then due to the county and the state is the budget document by the 25th, and that will include graphs and all kinds of other stuff, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that. It will also be posted on the website with a list of other things that we're required to have out there. So the first slide I wanted to bring up is just a reminder of what we shared at the last board meeting. The number in yellow highlighted is what ended up being our actual capital outlay based on what we published and what 8 Mills brings in for us based on the assessed valuation. And then the state aid is 8% of that based on what the formula factor is. And so that's kind of where we ended up. You'll see, and as we talked last time, our goal was very much to try to make this as neutral as possible. Salary calculations on the FTE are averages, so some of this will kind of move slightly as we get into actual information and the year gets implemented. But the top part is where the salary settlements were for packages. We talked about a few FTE that we needed to add, and then FTE that were reduced. Some different things through there, and then some general operating expenses for those numbers down at the bottom. So the next slide I'm going to take you through a little bit is kind of where our cash balances ended and some of the things we talked about trying to adjust for that deficit spending and what happens through the year. When we talked about deficit spending up to this point, it's pretty much been kind of budgeted revenues, budgeted expenditures, where does that actually end up when everything closes down? And how can we navigate that in an effort to make sure we minimize our use of contingency reserve going forward, because we know we're kind of getting to the end of our cash balances. So as we look at this next slide, I'll talk about this little chart to the left here in a minute. But the big chart is what comes out of our budget documents, and the numbers that are in yellow are the most direct operating expenditures where we transfer from general fund that covers the expenditures in those funds. The green is kind of what I would call secondary, where there are specific programs kind of restricted. Then we have contingency, we have some other reserves, and then we have contingency reserves. So the yellow, if you look at July 1 of 14, we had cash balances in a lot of those funds. July 1 of 15, they were 0. They're still going to be 0 at July 1 of 16. The only little bit we have in vocational was a late payment to us for reimbursement of some CTE stuff. That will go forward then. The green, you'll see that in July 1 of 15, we reduced some at-risk monies, and then there was some special ed went down. That was the green down here. You'll see that added to that green for this current year was summer school. That's where a couple board meetings ago you approved that transfer back to general fund to help offset some expenditures with that $125,000. And so that's kind of part of that. The orange, which is not so orange up here, is kind of our contingency reserve. And then the blue, which is kind of new this year, we didn't have to tap into so much last year, is our healthcare work comp reserve, but we used some of that healthcare reserve to offset expenditures and up to about $1.7 million to help this year. So when you look at the bottom, this is kind of where our spending of those highlighted fields are and what we kind of ended up covering through cash balances from 14 to 15. From 15 to 16, we've used this much in cash balances, and this is kind of where those categories fell. We did have to go into contingency about $1 million. I think if you remember from the February presentation that I did, it was going to be up to a couple $1 million that we potentially needed to do. If you go back to that February 8th slide, this was sort of that very budgeted information that we thought was going to be that deficit target. What this cash balance doesn't show you is that additional revenue we might have got in that got to offset something, or something got underspent, or there's changes in there. So if you look at how we were able to cover some of the other deficit kind of spending before we had to go into these cash balances, we covered a big portion of that with forfeitures. We took 3 months of our forfeitures to help cover the new cost of 403Bs. We have some Medicaid reimbursement. These are all things I cannot budget. These are just things that fall into play during the year that help us offset where we might go with cash balances. Does that kind of make sense? And so we kind of navigate that until the end of the year and then determine, well, where are those cash balances we actually have to pull from because we didn't have something that helped us cover some of the other. So, we have some reimbursement revenues that come in. The big one is, if you recall, we do have virtual waiting But the program doesn't necessarily cost us everything that we're getting for the weighting, and under Senate Bill 7 and the block grant, we're able to use that or absorb it back into general fund to help cover expenditures. That this year was about $1.4 million for us. So that's a big chunk of what we didn't then have to use in cash balances. There's a lot of little pluses and minuses to varying degrees that kind of netted out to this 470. And then that's the cash balance that we had to pick up to basically zero out that budgeted deficit that we kind of have been talking about. Does that kind of make sense? The other cash balances that I don't really talk about in here because they're very restricted and pretty much in white are things like capital outlay. You know, here's what our capital outlay has done. But it's not counted in anything we're trying to cover our operating dollars because it's very restricted and on its own. But you'll see that bond and interest is up. Well, that's because our bond and interest payments are up, and we have to make sure that balance on July 1 covers what we owe, you know, in a 9-month or for the budget year. So, because all of our principal and interest is due in September, we don't get any revenue in that fund until December or January. So that July 1 number has to be high enough to cover all of that, which is about $14 million for us this year. So that's kind of where we ended a little bit of the year. You can see over the average between the last two budget years, it averages out to about a $5 million. And if we're looking at, you know, a target as we plan going forward, we're going to have to plan on trying to reduce that average of $5 million. And one of the things that you'll see as we built it this year, because all of these operating revenues are now getting down to zero, to make the budget balance this year, you'll actually see that I had to transfer from the contingency reserve fund into the general fund enough, about $2.7 million in order to get through and keep 16-17 balanced. That's budgeted on paper. Hopefully as we get actual, we'll be able to minimize that. But I actually had to put that in the budget document this year. I can't reduce other transfers because there is no more cash balance to let those absorb in those other funds as I build them. So that's something that we're kind of getting towards where we're having to think about using that reserve money. Any questions as I talk about the cash balance? Does that kind of make sense? It falls in line with everything we've kind of been talking about as the year goes on. So the next slide I'm going to talk about is just how we're getting to that general fund authority and where some of this works. Remembering that we are on a block grant formula. We are in year 2, and there is no school finance formula at the end of June unless they write something different. So some of the things built in here or with the old formula, we don't have any idea if they'll be here July 1. But going into this year, this is where we are. So if you recall, we start with 14-15, and we take out the virtual and the cost of living and new facilities. There weren't any at that time. And then the extraordinary amount to get what's then our state aid going forward for last year, 15-16, and again for 16-17. None of these at-risk weightings apply. So we kind of start with this state aid amount. We then look at virtual. Virtual is outside. It is an FTE with the base state aid per pupil that's kind of then added on top. So we're adding that back in. What I did discover as we actually got the forms, which I kind of wondered if they were going to go this route but didn't know for sure, and that is the part-time actually went to the 16-17 level of 1,700, so they decreased it, but they kept the full-time at 15-16 level of 5,000 instead of increasing it to 5,600. That gave them the best of the most money by doing it that way, so they sort of split it. That was not real clear when they said they were keeping it at the 15-16 level funding, but when the forms came out, this is how they populated. So that's a little bit of a twist. We have padded the enrollment just a little bit because, again, to publish high and make sure we don't have to republish a general fund, or if there happens to be growth or something else that varies within general fund, that we have that authority published for that. So that's kind of where we are. Could be full-time will be up, full-time, part-time will be down. It's hard to say, and then the credits could change. But as you add those together, you do get a budget authority amount of about this that, again, gets built into the general fund. We then have new facilities, state aid. We're in the second year. New facilities has to do with those new classrooms, not remodeled. They have to be brand new classrooms. And the kids in them, and we get to count an FTE times 0.25 times the old base aid of 3852, which is kind of what this formula up here is. And that will give us one more year, one-time money. That just is helping us absorb and manage our budget going forward through this year. Don't know if it'll exist after this formula. If it does, then hopefully they'll allow us to do that second year of things that we're starting up this fall, because we're only getting to do year 1 at this point, and then the year 2 things will finish. So it is not. No. Now, the concept behind it was to help with that stuff, to get those startup costs, but they don't say that's the only, you can blend it back into general fund and use it. So, but it is one-time money, so if you do commit it to ongoing and then it goes away under a budget going forward, you'll have to deal with it. But we don't know what that formula will look like, so right now it's built into our general fund, yeah. The next one is a special levy that we get, and that's cost of living. It's related to, there's not very many of us, but there's a few in the state where the cost of living, the real estate, is high. And so this is basically bringing or giving school districts that are in that kind of a situation a little bit of extra dollars. The intent when it went into place was that it would help with teacher salaries in order for them to be able to buy homes in a community that the cost of living was higher than maybe the state average. So we have had that for a number of years. Up until the block grant, we did just sort of a flat amount because the percent changes based on the average cost compared to the average in the state. And we didn't want to get a whole bunch of dollars and then have it go down and have to cut those dollars. So we kept it fairly flat. Under the new formula last year, the base increased because they passed through capers and they passed through LOB to the general fund, which bumped up the base. So that same percent of 1.97 that we were using was a little bit more last year. It was about 1.5. Well, this year they took LOB out of the formula and they're not passing it through anymore. In addition, our percentage went down to 1.79. So the dollars that we'll generate from cost of living will be about $188,000 less than what we did a year ago. They're still slightly above 2 years ago, but it just moved on us based on the formula changes that they've made in the interim. Putting all that together, you get, in essence, the general fund state aid number. So you talk about the block grant amount, get to build back in virtual facilities, the special weightings, and then get down here. This little prorate they were going to give us based on our FTE was going to be $25 a kid. This current year, 15-16, they didn't have any money to give it to us, so we didn't get anything. When they built the budget forms, they said, you're not going to get any money next year, so it's zero. So it's in there, but there's no money tied to it. That makes sense so far? That's kind of what the form looks like to get your maximums. Then you are pulling your pass-throughs. You have your special education state aid that pulls through and adds to that legal max. Capers, the LOB is no longer there. Capital outlay is no longer there. Those were two numbers that they were actually passing through this year. The capers is built on 4 quarters, not 3 that they did this year, but it does change that. And then these other little numbers here, because we get some student tuition, we kind of have to build in potential for this. Doesn't mean that we're going to get it, but we do have to build something in here to make sure this number is high. This is where I said you're going to see for the first time that we've actually had to build in a budgeted transfer from contingency to reserve in order for us to make Code 6 and the general fund balance. So that makes sense, and that's kind of where we are to get to our legal max for general fund. Then we have our LOB, if you'll remember. It's going back to the old finance formula, but we get no dollars here. So the only thing that's impacting us here is pretty much property tax relief. So if you remember the block grant in 13-14, here's what it was in 14-15, and this is our base going forward. When we published this year, we thought the state aid was going to be 5.9. Thus, we built a mill levy based on that revenue being higher in this particular bucket. Did not happen. We had to come up with carryover in-process taxes, and what we couldn't cover there was cash balance. But that meant then when they took away that state aid in 15-16, again, the dollars stay the same, but you're filling the bucket less with state aid, so you have to fill it more with taxes, and then we had a tax mill levy increase last year to fill that same bucket of money. Didn't get any more money, but we had to fill it with taxes instead of state aid. Now the state aid, to be equitable, is going back to the high number. Again, we have no new dollars, but that means we have less taxes we need to come up with in order for us to fill that same bucket of funding. That mill levy goes down. We anticipate it would go down at least 2 mills because it should go back to this level. But we've also had assessed valuations increased since 14-15 that allow us to have an even less mill levy because we're raising more per mill than we did in 14-15. So the mill levy change from will go down, and it's just property tax relief to our taxpayers, but the mill levy based on publication tonight is going to be at 14.4, down from the 17.3. Any questions related to that? Okay. So we have other mill levy funds, so we need to talk a little bit about those and what they are and what that's going to look like for us as you publish the budget tonight. Assessed valuation, a little bit of history. You can see, we were really flat. If you go back way beyond this one, you'll see big increases, 8%, 7%, really big, nice numbers. But that kind of went flat about 2007-8 kind of time frame. You can see where we even decreased one year. It's picked up a little bit, but not like those levels that we were seeing way back when it was really high. But it has increased, and you'll see we were, here, and so 14, 15 it went up, and here, and it's about this much of an increase going forward for us this year. Any questions with that? If you remember, the general fund is based on a lesser amount because every home gets a 20% exemption, and then that's what they're taxed the 20 mills on, whereas the rest of the millage is taxed on the full amount. So there's why there's a difference. When you look at our mill levies then, you'll see that we have, actually this should say 8 years because I didn't take this old year off, I apologize, but you can kind of see what our history has done, where we've gone up and down. This is where we had to go up last year because of that change in our state aid. But we're going down here, and it is all property tax relief. There is nothing in here that's giving us any new money. If we wanted to, we couldn't mill anymore because it wouldn't give us anything. It's just would be taxing for no reason. So this is what the millage is a result of the funding formulas. So that's property tax relief. You'll also see that we've maintained the 8 mills in capital, and we've kind of maintained these others for a total decrease of this year's millet will be down 3.165. You'll notice that we are down in bond and interest. This kind of has continued to go down, even though we are now sold and probably the highest amount of principal and interest that we have, but a combination of just our mill levy and the way we've kind of projected and worked through our bond issue, selling it, the schedule that we have for paying principal and interest, and trying to set this up to not have a high mill levy for bond and interest, thinking about future. You'll remember that in 12-13, this was sort of our target, that we promised a no tax increase and we would at least maintain that. We've actually maintained it or less, and that was in combination with our capital outlay. And this is just a function of assessed valuation and some state aid that's gone up slightly, and there's not much we can do. Again, it's a result. But this is sort of that target where we said, we would keep and try to stay as a lid for bond issue, even looking forward. You might see that as you think about that with your facility study and where you will want to go with that new bond issue and the mill levy. This was sort of that target that we were hoping to maintain as we go forward. And so even if you got back to that, there might be a slight increase, but you're still well below where we were years prior to that. So it's a good thing. It is a good thing. Any questions about that in the mill levy? No? So this, everybody wants to know, what's that mean to my house? So I do have a little worksheet where you can actually plug in a number and it'll calculate that, but I'll walk through this real briefly. This is a $150,000 home where I said you have $150,000, you take off the $20,000 because that's an exemption. Then you have an 11.5% of that is what your assessed value is that the mill's based on. So that's for 20 mills, but the rest of it's based on the full amount. So you'll see that it's calculated kind of in two different levels, and at that home would be $935. Remember, this is only school district. When you look at your property taxes, you got city, county, and state, not just school district. So this is just a tiny component of that. But if you look at then what the lower mill levy over here is, you'll see that if you do that same formula, it's about a $54, $55 decrease in property taxes, or basically $4.50 a month. Does that kind of make sense? You could, and my little worksheet, you could plug whatever value home is you want, it'll calculate it out, but that's just an example. Any questions on that? So what we do when you look at your Code 99 tonight, you're comparing your budget to your actual. You have 2 years prior actual, and then you have the budgeted amount. Remembering again in that budgeted column, we are budgeting enough authority to make sure that we don't have to republish something and that there's ability to function within that. What you're publishing and approving is those maximums, both publication of budget and your mill levy. Again, republishing on a levied fund is not allowed, so those levied funds we just talked about, we're stuck with them no matter what. Even if we had money to spend beyond that, we're stuck with just that limit. And then your other funds, if you haven't published high enough and you go beyond the reimbursement, then it is a statutory violation, and people like Moody's don't like things like that. So again, we try to navigate those waters to make sure we're in a good place. These are all those other funds that are also part of the budget besides the levied fund: food service, vocational, special ed, driver's training. All of those were what we call special revenue funds that we have to make sure money gets moved to or is included in those funds and spent for those purposes. When you look at the publication on Code 99, page 2, line 110, where it says net expenditures, that's net of transfers, you're going to see where that actual to budget difference is. And I just tried to outline kind of the high parts of that to show you where those changes for the majority of the dollars are. So capital outlay, we publish higher. We had a lot of expenditures last year, so we're kind of at a high end there. But that difference between the 155, 381, 929 is our budgeted authority net transfers, and then actual from 15-16. 3,419,540 of it is the increase in what is now our bond and interest payment, and that's because we sold our last bonds, and that's what we owe. So that's what we have to show there. Capers is another big chunk. Actual only shows 3 quarters. We got a budget for 4. We may never see that 4th quarter from this year, but that's a significant difference or change in that particular column. Gifts and grants is always published high, and that's because we could possibly have future local grants, donations, those kinds of things, and we need to make sure we have the room to be able to do that. And everything else is just that 3.8 of kind of minor ups and downs for what that total change is. Does that make sense? So then this is your Code 99 that you're approving. You'll see again, those are your actual columns. Your mill levies are set here, and then you see what the budgeted column is. This is what the dollars levied will be based on the mill levy that you're approving. And on page 2, this is the line we just talked about, your 141 versus your 155. It is net of transfers because we budget and then we transfer out, and you have to kind of remove those intercompany kinds of movements so that you get a net impact. And then you can see that this is your mill levy that you're setting in here. So this is what you're approving tonight in order for us to publish in the Journal World. And then we'll have a budget hearing on the 8th related to this and the components of it. And if all is good, we'll approve it and then move it to certification with the state. So any questions? This is kind of a wrap up of lots of variety of meetings from all year long. So
I don't have a question, but can we flip back one slide?
Sure. Just one?
Just one.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to point out, yet again, we've talked about this before, 2014, 2015, and then 2015, 2016 actually. Look at that first line, and I get asked about this. Well, your budget went up a whole lot from year to year. That is the difference of counting capers.
All those things that passed through that didn't pass through.
That there was no change in money that we actually got to spend on construction or teachers or anything else.
No. It used to be the money came to us, we put it directly in the Capers Fund, and then it went directly out of the Capers Fund. Now we get it, we put it in the general fund, we transfer it to the Capers Fund, and then we transfer it back to the state.
State accounting magic. Wow, we have more money than we're giving to our school district because we know how to make it look appear in different columns than we used to. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Kathy, how much is left after this dip into the contingency for this year's budget? How much is left?
The contingency reserve, and I'll go back to the cash summary here, is about, where is it at? Here we are. So with the $1 million that we took out this year, we're about 5.4. We've budgeted 2.7, hoping we don't have to use all of that, but that's what you kind of have left. There may be some special reserve money. We can kind of do that with health insurance like we did this year to kind of help offset that, and we'll try to minimize that as best that we can. You know, we have a lot of unknowns getting to the end of this year. We don't know what the new finance formula will look like. We don't know, cash flow is always a concern. If the state has trouble with tax revenues again, are we going to be able to make things happen? And that's always kind of something that we're we're going to have to watch. We have a little bit of a cash flow where we might not use the contingency by the end of the year, but you might see during some of our budget reports that the contingency was used to do kind of a cash flow. So like July and August, we might transfer to SPED or another fund to help with the cash flow and then transfer it back when we actually get our state aid. So it kind of helps with that piece of it. And, you know, we're getting to where it's a little scary to get it too much lower just because we need that ability to navigate cash flow and some other things legally. You know, there's cash flow in the bond and interest fund, but it's really set there to be for principal and interest, not for my general fund cash flow. So, but we'll do what we need to. So, yeah.
And as you've pointed out before, Shannon, the reason that we've been spending down reserves and or contingency is in partly at the direction, I mean, this is what the legislature has wanted districts to do, so.
They've been fussing at us, wrongly in my opinion, but they've been fussing at school districts in general for holding cash balances that they deem to be too high or sitting on money, and so we've spent it down, and as I said to somebody today, we've kind of reached that point where we've spent it. We've done what they've directed us to now. They need to take that into consideration in setting a funding formula that actually provides for the actual cost of educating our students. Can we flip back to the slide where you showed the adjustments for this year? I think it was one of the first slides.
Yep.
Not
That
this
one?
one right here. Okay. So another thing that has come up, and I think some board members may have gotten questions about already, is the column where it says FTE, and there's the 8 elementary, 4 middle, and 5 high school, plus 1 district-wide nurse. So what that's showing is reductions in staff positions that we are reducing for this year. Most of those are coming from retirements and attrition. That's my understanding. But we do have 3 positions that we actually eliminated where we non-renewed.
That's correct.
And that had to do with realignment of course offerings at the high schools?
Right. So when we worked with the high school principals over the course of the year, knowing that we're faced with some challenging financial situations, we looked at College and Career Center and we looked at class size numbers, and with the combination of that, there was proposals that allowed us to combine some classes, rename some classes, and essentially consolidate and gain some efficiencies where we felt like we could reduce 3 teaching positions and still deliver the same curriculum as we could.
Some lower enrollment classes, in
Yeah.
other words?
Yep.
Okay. Because one of the criticisms I've already read about this is that we're increasing class size, and I think, you know, my thinking on that is we have not yet had to take the step of increasing our ratio, which would mean increased class sizes in classrooms across the district kind of uniformly. But yes, in some cases this will likely mean that instead of having a class of 20 and 20, you're going to have 27 and 20, 20, 20, 20, you're going to have larger numbers, especially when we're talking about when are we going to split those classes, because we don't have as many teachers to take an extra class. So this is a direct impact from the state's action or inaction in making sure that they've provided us with additional funds, particularly in Lawrence, because we're a growing district. We have more students every year, have had more students every year that I've been on the board. And so I just wanted to point that out, because it's not something we're doing because we want to.
To point to a little bit more on the staffing piece, so at the elementary level, if you remember, some of our boundary changes have been, a balancing out of enrollment, particularly at Deerfield and Sunset Hill. And by doing that, then we were able to eliminate some class sections at Deerfield while still not having to add those at Sunset Hill. Now that drove up the average class size, probably more at Sunset Hill than it is at Deerfield. It actually probably dropped their class size a little bit, and we'll see how that plays out once we get to September 20th and actually see kids in seats. So some of that's been due to some boundary changes that we've been real purposeful with. And then at the middle school and at the high school, we talked about that. At the middle school, some of that a little bit is changing how we deliver the point ones and point twos of a schedule. So instead of filling out a schedule with having somebody do other duties assigned, we're sharing staffs between buildings a little bit more. We're trying to be more efficient with that and just be tighter. And as we look at elementary hires, we still are holding back on contingency instead of, in years past. I think last year we started, holding those until we went over the threshold. And if they didn't go over the threshold, we weren't giving another teacher until that happened. So in some cases, this year will be the same. We'll be potentially adding a section using a contingency teacher in August. So that's difficult. We wish it wasn't that way, but I think that's the most fiscally responsible thing we can do to maintain consistency across the district and in the current situation we're in. So,
Thank you for that clarification.
So our motion tonight would be to approve this for publication and allow us to put it in the Journal World. And then this also, as you can see from the top, sets the hearing date, being here, August 8th at 7 o'clock. And then the approval would be later. So,
Do you have a motion?
I can make a motion. I move the Board of Education approve for publication the 2016, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it wasn't on. I move the Board of Education approve for publication the 2016-2017 budget maximums and mill levies as noted on the budget form code 99 with a budget hearing to be scheduled for August 8th, 2016 at 7 p.m.
You have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Shannon. Any other further discussion? No? Okay, Janice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
so the only other comment I have to make there is good news is the mill levy went down. 3.165, I think was the number. So that's good for our taxpayers. The bad news is we are deficit spending, and we're dipping into our reserves at a fairly high rate, and we're going to have to develop a pretty good plan to address that. And I think we're going to have to start pretty early this fall in doing so. And like I said before, I think I said at the last meeting, work with the Finance Advisory Council and dig in, because it's going to be a challenge for sure. And we can't wait for the legislature to make a decision next May, because as you saw this year, it blew up our budget plan. Our budget plan didn't balance by about $400,000 because the virtual funding changed at the 11th hour. So we're going to have to be proactive.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Kyle. It's important to note that it's only going to get worse. So as voters out there, if you care about education, I think just pay attention to that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.